Welcome. Here we are again on Offsite Dirt. And I'll tell you what, sometimes we get to take a field trip. Of course, that's field trip with a PH. So we're gonna visit some friends today. My name is Mark Willie, and I'm joined here on Offsite Dirt with Audrey Grubesic. Audrey, how are you?
I'm doing so well. Today we are talking high performance build. And luckily for us, through social media, we have been able to collaborate and connect with two amazing companies. We have Anthony Jenkins with Outlier and David Millard with EcoWise Homes. It's a celebration when you can connect to another continent. And we are talking in Australia today, which is phenomenal because literally a couple of weeks ago, I was just on their plane ride over from them because I was in Bali. So I know next time that I'm going to have to visit these two because they are creating and designing homes that we have never seen before. Take it away, Mark. What are we talking about?
So today it's some of our favorite subjects, right? We have some passive house stuff going on. So if that's a term that's new for y'all, well, you're going to want to pay attention. Sit down, get yourself a nice beverage. And if you're not if passive house is something that you're used to, listen to what they bring up. But we're also going to be talking about the world of panelized and offsite construction. And I'll tell you, the collaboration when those two things comes together is pretty magnificent. And let's start with the baseline here. So when you get to your backyards, when you get to your neighborhoods, when you get to the other buildings that are found in your area, Anthony, tell us what the landscape is like, and then venture into what the collaboration of you and your team does to transform the marketplace and the buildings we live in.
Yeah, thanks, Mark and Audrey. I really appreciate it, and our pleasure to be here. So, yes, we're based in Australia. The climate here is essentially a volume builder-driven one. So the majority of construction that we see around this country is not climate responsive at all, and it's a typical makeup that looks like a slab on grade, a 2x4 wall system, which is has an R14 insulation bad inside. There's a non-porous, non-vapor wrap on the outside, usually foil backed. So, we've got all kinds of moisture issues occurring and durability issues with the buildup of condensate and vapor. We've then got roof, ceiling insulation that probably is around R28 or so, and typically there's nothing further on top of the roof from there. So, a lot of prefabricated wall and truss systems as well. But that's about the limitations of what a home looks like right through the country. And to be honest, typically that's single glazing right through and aluminium frames, non-thermally broken, of course. So that's the standard volume home that we have in the country. So that's what where our benchmark still sits with our National Construction Code. However, I think the majority of, at least in our niche, and the consumer market is growing towards wanting more, wanting better, want a healthier and safe homes and durable. So we've newly, I would say newly, comparatively, it's probably in the 5-year range, been introduced to a thing called passive house in this country. And I think it's revolutionized things. Now, it's come in a wave. It's flooding through the country. We've got multiple certified designers, tradespeople, and even have a few certifiers now, and that list is continually growing. And from there, I suppose that's where David and I come in. We've sort of been working on how we can take that and adapt that to what we do. Now, I don't know if you've got anything further to add to that, David, as to what the status quo in Australia is?
No, I'll probably just like to touch on the climate that we are here. So obviously we're from down under. We're Victoria, which is sort of the southern part of Australia. And typically we'll see temperatures in the middle of winter get down below 0 Celsius. So I think that's about sort of 28 degree Fahrenheit. And then in the midst of summer and that, we sort of get up around that 42 degrees Celsius, which is, I think that's just above 100 degrees Fahrenheit for you guys. In Australia, in America. So, we do sort of see two different extremes that, we do get quite cold in winter, but, I know you Americans get a lot colder over there than what we do. But yeah, summer and that we do get quite warm too. So we sort of are, got two different sides of
Yeah.
where the
And
barriers that we're
and we
trying to
see
deal with.
really high relative humidity rates as well during our winters in the southern parts of the country where we're located. So, we might have 80+% relative humidity out externally. And we definitely don't want to see those levels of humidity inside our homes for longer periods of time. So they need to be mitigated as well. And I'll be honest, an internal ventilation strategy or mechanical ventilation is a very foreign thing here in this country as well. If you can imagine, as far as it gets here, we usually have a fan that's just ducted straight to the roof space, and that's it.
Amazing. Gosh, that was a whole lot of information just coming at us from Australia. It's so wonderful. So, Anthony, you're part of the company, or you're the owner of Outlier, which is basically the design, the research, the education team. And then, Anthony, you're with EcoWise. So, you're kind of doing the pre-construction and helping him through that process, I'm guessing, with the client. Can you just give us a little bit more about your relationship and why this is so special, especially in your marketplace?
Yep. So I found traditionally that I used to go down the path of the clients would tender a job out. So they'd go reach out to any design company. They'd go through the whole design process. And then once they finished all their working drawings, then they would tender it out to numerous different builders. But I found doing that process that they would generally find that it was well and truly above their budget, especially once you start doing high performance or passive house. It can be sort of deceiving how much things do cost. So since that, Anthony and I have collaborated together where a client engaged me as a consultant throughout the build stage, so the pre-construction process. And at the same time, they engaged Anthony or any other building designer to obviously do the design. Anthony and I often chat about that as the builder, we have the best understanding of how much homes do cost. Obviously, Anthony has an amazing understanding himself, but there's no one better to understand the cost of a home than the builder. And I think just also from a structural perspective that us builders can pick up things off a set of plans. It's like, hang on, this just isn't going to work structurally. Can we change this around, that sort of thing? So I think that sort of input's invaluable throughout the design stage.
Yeah, it's and it seems to make so much sense when you consider that if you've got your team together from the very beginning, so a client, designer, and build team, and they all have the same desired outcome, that you're going to have that best outcome. As soon as one of those components is removed or is not balanced, then you're going to end up with a really unfavorable outcome. And for us, typically that process might take 12 to 18 months to go through, and lots of time and emotion and cost to develop all of this documentation and the design, to then just tender it out at the end of that, say, 18-month period between 3 to 5 builders for it to come back and then be unattainable. There are numbers in Australia that say that it's up to 80% of designs actually don't go through to fruition. Now, with this approach, we're 100% success rate. So, it does work for us, and collaboration is key, I think, is the main takeaway from that.
So it's perfect segue there with your collaboration, right? You guys also have a approach. So there's a methodology there, and you call it, I believe, the hybrid home methodology. Walk us through this process and, again, shine light on the collaborative way for success and how that 18-month outlook is 100% every time.
Yep. I might start with this one. So going back about 2 years ago, there was a project that I was collaborating on as the builder, and Outlier Studios were designing it, and the client was looking to do a passive house. And we're looking to go down that traditional passive house realm of airtight membranes internally and the full external building wrap and insulation, that sort of thing. But we found it was well and truly above the client's budget. So it's when we put our heads together as a builder and also a designer of how can we make this home cost effective to get it over the line. And that's where we remove the internal membranes of the home and actually rethought about how we're going to build it. And we utilise plasterboard as the airtight system, or chip rock as you guys call it over there. So with that, we actually build all the external walls and don't build any internal walls. So we sort of got these details off Steve Basic and Jack Brereton. I'm sure you guys are well aware of them over there. Yeah, so we built all the external walls, roof the house, and then plaster. Put all the windows in, and then we plaster all the external walls. And then as we come back later on, and we actually build all the internal walls afterwards and that. So we've got that continuous plasterboard internally, which creates the airtight system. Have you got anything you'd like to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably worth touching on why it is. So there's a couple of things here, I suppose, to just unpack from specifically an Australian perspective. And the first is that we have a really limited availability to materials that I'll just put into the high performance category. So, you know, to go and get a window that wasn't aluminium was just, again, almost an impossible feat. In fact, I don't even know if there are any local manufacturers. We are importing everything. When it comes to building wraps, whether it's vapor barriers or weather resistive barriers, again, that was something that we had to import. I know it sounds crazy, but we just did not have that here in this country at all. So thankfully, you know, in that sort of 5-year time going back there, we saw a lot of people starting to realize this. Maybe they were trying to design and build a home of their own to a higher standard or higher performance, and they look to import it. And a lot of those people have become distributors of those products in the country now. So they're importing and distributing for us. But you know, there really is just still a really limited amount of availability here for materials, and that's, you know, that's probably been the biggest hurdle to initially begin with. But now that's, you know, we're hitting the curve and we're starting to see more of that coming into the country, which is great. And, you know, we've used a lot of American manufactured products in our own projects as well. The second part of that is that we have an extraordinarily high labor cost here in Australia. So I think we're definitely in top 5 in the world. So that's probably dates back to a lot of the unionization that existed early on in our construction industry in the major cities and has flowed through there as well. So labor is a really significant part of a build. I've heard that it's up to 60+% or more of the makeup of the cost of building here. So for us, we wanted to identify those main issues. So the two things that we needed to be able to do, like David said, we looked at certified passive house as the initial approach to this project, and the budget constraints were real. We had to, you know, really identify what we could do. So the first thing we did was look at material usage. How could we reduce cost by maybe finding materials that were just off the shelf, standard from, you know, the hardware shop down the road. The second one was, how can we reduce the labor component? There is a lot of time spent using tape, you know, pressure sensitive tapes on wraps and airtight barriers, etc. So how can we reduce that? So yeah, as David just touched on, we were able to then use conventional materials like plasterboard or gyprock to create the airtight barrier. And, you know, that was just the start of things to come. So we basically just disassembled this entire house, looked at all of the components that we thought were, I suppose, bespoke to us or unique to the country, and then put them back together with standard materials and practices. And, you know, that methodology is what we've now called hybrid home.
Yeah. And it's like every home, the majority of the homes are designed here in Australia have plasterboard as the internal lining that are just there aesthetically. So it's like, well, if you can detail up the joins and connections, you know, like the connections from the bottom, the slab to the plasterboard, and make that airtight, you're not having to, you know, you got a product that's aesthetically would be used, but it also has a performance aspect. So I reckon that's amazing, where, you know, you can just eliminate an internal membrane that's only there for airtightness by just having this product you would have had aesthetically anyway.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, that's really climate dependent. I mean, I don't believe we would have been able to achieve the outcomes that we have with this particular system we've just identified or just explained in an area where we might get freezing temperatures. So that, you know, if we had ice damming or something like that occurring here in our systems, we would. I don't know this would be the best approach, but fortunately in Australia, we just do not see that. We do not get temperatures that are low enough at that state, you know, freezing point. At all, really, and especially even in our alpine regions. And, you know, for those who are listening, we do have snowfields here. You know, we do have some colder climates, but they're very, very short seasonal periods throughout the year. And you know, there's not a great deal of people residing there for more than 3 to 4 months of the year.
You know, I just wanted to step in, Mark. all the things that you guys are facing there are all the same things we are facing in the United States. We're all facing budget constraints, all facing materials, all facing this labor. And that's really why we created Offsite Solutions, to be able to effectively try something new. And I know we were kind of discussing, this is really a small percentage of building that's done in Australia. And we're really not that much far ahead of you guys, because we're probably about, I don't know, anywhere from like maybe 8% using an offsite solution. But we're lucky enough because there are people that are seeing advocacy for using high performance materials, and Source 2050 is one of our clients, and we were able to introduce them, and they're a website resource for materials. So it is progressing. We're seeing this happen, and I love that not only are you building, but you've created a system, you know, the hybrid home methodology, and being able to kind of move to that next level of building really helps us to see that we are always evolving this process. So in that collaboration and looking at all of those things, where do you see the future for your company moving forward to after this? I know that right now on Instagram, we were looking at the Sedgwick hybrid home, and I know that project is going on. Do you want to just first talk, you know, a little bit about that project? Because it's exciting to see the advances on Instagram.
Yeah, so that's an amazing project to have, and it's amazing clients in Sedgwick there. It's the property is involved, so probably about 100 odd acres of rolling hills there, and the whole concept is the owner was brought up in outback Queensland, which is sort of northern part of Australia, and his whole design aspect, he really wanted to sort of have like a sort of a shearing shed sort of style home. So it's all going to be corrugated iron, some parts of sort of rusty cordon steel and that, and again, that's the whole hybrid home methodology. That's, you know, it's an airtight home. And I don't think one thing we haven't discussed here is just the airtight homes in Australia. I know your regulations over there, that different states and that have different airtight different regulations, and that there's, even though our National Construction Code has a sort of a regulation that needs to be 10 air changes, it's definitely not policed here in Australia. There would be very, very, very small percentage of homes actually get blower doored here in Australia, air tested. And yeah, it's actually quite shocking. I think the average new home here in Australia is about 15 air changes an hour.
Yeah, that's right. 15.
So yeah, it's definitely something that I can definitely see it needs to be improved here in Australia, is to start testing homes and making sure they are airtight, not maybe to the fact that they need full mechanical ventilation, but yeah, it's definitely something that, you know, can be improved on.
Yeah, look, our construction code does have, it's not mandatory at all to test homes here in Australia, and nor are any homes checked when they're built for performance standards. Yes, they are for structural reasons, but yeah, look, no performance checks whatsoever throughout our building inspections. So, you know, if insulation is not installed or the wrong insulation is not installed in those walls, no one will know and no one checks. And, you know, blower door testing is even just further removed from that again. There is a verification method in the code to be able to blow a door to hit a minimum 10 air changes an hour at 50 pascals of pressure when testing. But again, it's just not a mandatory test at all. And with our we've got a CSRIO, which is like our national testing agency or science agency, and look, they've tested homes all around the country. And in our state, the average is around 19 air changes, but the average across the entire country is 15. And that's fortunately brought down to that lower number, believe it or not, by Tasmania, that little tiny island that exists at the bottom right-hand corner of Australia on the map. They're very cold climate comparative to the rest of the country. And they just kind of worked it out themselves that, hey, if we build a bit more airtight, it's actually more comfortable.
Sorry to segue there.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can circle back to Sedgwick hybrid home and what we've been able to do there. So testing's a big part of what we do. So we do that for all of our builds. In that collaborative process, you know, David's working with us pre-construction. Well, then we sort of flip the table, so to speak. And then I come on during the construction and I bring my big red blower door and I bring my thermal camera and we inspect these things and test these things throughout the entire construction process as we go. So we're able to ensure that, we've got those checks and balances in place. We do a nice report for the clients as well as say, hey, look, we've checked everything. It's working fantastically. We even go above and beyond. I mean, there's been occasions where Dave and I have had the fog machine or smoke machine out there to make sure and check that our ventilated cavity systems are working effectively, and just to, just have fun. I think that's where the exciting part comes in as well for me. So, but then, look, the hybrid home at Sedgwick particularly, we have a lot of sensors in our projects. So the previous project that David and I collaborated on, we filled it with sensors. So there are temp and humidity sensors inside the wall systems, back and front of gyprock and external WRB, in the roof space. We've got temp sensors in the ground. So we know what our ground temperatures are doing and what we must effectively do to address that when it comes to insulation and thermal barriers. So we've completely insulated our slab on that project at the Sedgwick hybrid home. So it's uncoupled from the ground, which, our ground temp was sitting around 6 to 8 degrees, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit off the top of my head, but Celsius. So we knew that we needed to have some insulation to completely uncouple that slab from the ground with those temperatures, considering that we're trying to have that internal temperature of the home at around 20, 23 degrees. And then we use a wider stud. Was it
140 stud?
Well, yeah, it's 140 millimeters. So I can't recall what that is in inches. I think 2x6.
Yeah.
With larger insulation in there comparative to what our normal standard is. Minimum thermally broken double glazed windows. As David mentioned, the plaster or gyprock airtight barrier. Now we are hitting below 0.6 air changes an hour just with the gyprock as our air barrier. So we're sitting below passive house standard numbers there, which means we absolutely do have continuous mechanical ventilation in the home. So we do run a heat recovery system here. Our climate does still allow for that. It's not until you get to about Sydney in Australia or a bit further north that you might look at just an ERV or an energy recovery ventilation system over a HRV. Further to that, we also, what do we look at? We look at ventilation strategies externally as well. So we do have those ventilated cavities for moisture management and durability. So bulk water is still number one. That's still our main focus for homes here, and definitely is for us with our collaboration. That's our focus for sure, both internally as well. So the bathrooms and wet areas, I did hear it likened to being like a tropical rainforest. So we should be treated that way and given the consideration that it deserves. Not just as, just a single fan sticking through the ceiling into the roof space like you'll often see here. That's a ventilation strategy right there. Like that speaks volumes to how far removed we are, I think, from where it needs to be.
I don't know that the word strategy could be used with the dumping it in the attic, but
yeah, it's just moving the problem from here to there. It's still there. I mean, is there anything further that you add to that?
No, I think you covered it off really well. I suppose like with the sensors that we installed in our previous project, it's with this hybrid home that we're sort of doing something that's in Australia has never been done before, as far as we're aware, never been done before. So we just really want to verify and check that, we're not going to have any issues. We just don't want to be complete cowboys and just do anything that's going to cause any issues. So it's about, if there is an issue, we really want to pick it up early and make sure it's not going to happen.
It's really well said. Being cowboy is what got us to the point of changing standards, and changing standards. So without the cowboy effect, we wouldn't be here today, right?
Yeah.
But a good cowboy always looks over his shoulder and sees what happened. So I love, and I'm sure everyone is on the same pulse with it, the whole local approach and understanding what's available and understanding what's needed, right? So it's the convergence there that you both seem to do so well. Dial it down a little bit with some of the pH constraints, and even break us into the conversation of what people say when you're in meetings and you guys bring up the testing, when you bring up that the way that we're used to seeing things is not effective, right? So set the stage.
Yeah, so as far as the products and that, like so when we first sort of started, 5 years ago, and that there was limited products, but now there is products that are imported here to Australia and that sort of thing, as far as building wraps like WRB and tapes and that sort of thing, and windows. But like what I want to be able to achieve with a hybrid home is I want to be able to go down to any hardware shop locally and virtually be able to get anything off the shelf within reason, and just be able to put that in the home. I do find as the builder, if you are importing or you're getting specialized products to your home, you only have to be one sheet short or one roll short of a certain building wrap, and it can be a huge headache for you. So as much as possible, we want to try and utilize local products and just be able to source them from the hardware shop. And so I can't remember the other.
I think,
part of the
yeah,
question.
I mean, if we were to just have, a recap of what it would be like for us to sit with a client. So the three of us would be sitting down and we'd be discussing these things, and they understand when they see gyprock and these materials, that's something that they're familiar with in the home they live in currently. It's when we start to introduce some of those more, different materials, and it's foreign to them as well. But I guess that's the reason they're also coming to us, is because we do have that expertise and we're able to dumb it down, so to speak, or in lay terms, explain like what this is doing and how this effectively works. We're also backed by a huge amount of resource, and there's a lot of online content that we can give them to direct them to learn and educate from. Offsite Dirt, for example, we can send them there and say, hey, go check out these videos and educate yourself on this. And typically the clients that we're meeting with us they're sponges. They want to learn more. They want a better home. Some have actually been through horrible experiences, typically to do with mold. So we have a huge mold problem, particularly in the southern part of the country here, where, like we said, let's just say that fan's just blowing it from one place to another, and we're still getting, huge relative indoor humidity levels. It's just ripe for mold, and people have sensitivities to that here. And we're seeing, I think Australia has the highest per capita asthma rate in the world. And they're kind of thinking, what's going on here? And then we're kind of realizing, well, actually, it's our indoor air quality. It's horrible. And this is what's causing it to be so bad. What can we do? So there's health reasons. There's a lot of bushfire smoke here in Australia as well. So there's all these things that are just directly relatable in people's lives when we speak with them, and we can go, we've got solutions for this. This is what it is.
I think too, I believe the majority of clients that come to, myself and Anthony, obviously, as Anthony just touched on, that they watch our content and that sort of thing, so they sort of are on board. But majority of just trust, and we have a really good relationship with them. I generally do find a few people may have been going down that full passive house realm where they do see the internal membranes and that sort of thing. But I sort of found that once we sort of say, look, we've had sensors in this home that hasn't had any condensation form on the internal part of the wall or the external part of the wall, they're all right, generally, okay, that's fine. Let's keep moving forward, that thing. So again, that's the sensors. It's you can't deny science, can you?
No, I just love, we've pulled out the tablet many times and it's shown the live data feed, for projects. So it's the evidence.
The numbers speak volumes, right? The number speaks volumes. Yeah, environmental factors. And I think people want comfort, right? They're starting to be educated and know that they have a choice. It really does make such a difference. And you guys are doing it so well down under. We love it. In closing, what is your focus in the next couple of years? I know you were saying in 5 years, things are going to be expanding, but do you have anything on the horizon for the next 2 years or 3 years for your collaboration and your companies?
Well, yeah, certainly the collaboration. I mean, I think that we'll just continue to refine that and hopefully, provide some leadership for others to also adopt that approach. Don't be afraid to move away from traditional tendering processes and look at other options, because there are different, better outcomes out there. And if you're sitting there having those headaches of bad client experiences, teams not working together, maybe just reevaluate it and just think, why is this not working? And consider what we're doing. Do reach out if you want to, know more about that. I want to circle back, because I do want to touch on prefabrication prior to, maybe that's the closing point for myself. So I might let David, if you wanted to add anything to that at all.
Yeah, no, I'm just, the next 5 years for me is want to just keep collaborating with Outlier Studios and any other designers and interested in that thing. And for me, I'm very sort of process driven, as far as I really want to streamline the business. I don't want to have a large business, but just want things to run smoothly with the pre-construction process. process, and then on site with all the systems and processes that we use. But go chat about.
Yeah, no. So I'm not certain what the current climate is in America at the moment with housing affordability and availability. However, Australia's hit a crisis. So we're currently not able to meet the minimum quantities of homes to be able to support our growing population. So just to throw some numbers out there for some context or perspective. So we're looking to be able to build around 200,000 homes a year in the country just to facilitate our current population growth, which we're falling short on. And, that's probably due to a few very recent occurrences internationally and globally. But we also have a huge immigration quantity coming into the country. And I think it's around 500,000 in the country currently at the moment, which is the highest it's ever been. The federal government have said that they really do need to double that amount. So looking at around 400,000 homes a year, which at this moment it seems impossible. And they're expecting around 1 million homes short by 2040 approximately in the country. We're seeing larger developers in the country looking at prefabrication sites. So at the moment, everything that is modular seems to be either imported or they're doing steel frames without any consideration to, occupant health and thermal comfort. So there's a real push, I think, coming for prefabrication in this country. And it's something we've personally looked at as well, and will into the future. So, what does the scope or horizon look like for Outlier? Well, it definitely has prefabrication and modular offsite construction in the mix. And I think that, it's a great opportunity for many people in this country to be able to adopt that as well. I personally believe that it's pretty much one of the only solutions that we've got at this current time to be able to facilitate those, those outcomes that we need to hit those numbers. Yeah, it's
the numbers are staggering when you went from 200,000 to 400,000 to the 10-year projection. And in here, the mark is at 5 million current short. So I would guess the year upon year is for someone smarter than myself to share, right? But you're right, it is staggering. How is this going to be handled? It's been handled post-war in different around the world, but there needs to be a trigger point to get that flowing. And I don't understand why it ceases in the first place. That's another perspective. But the simple foundation that you created as this is what we need, and the way to which to achieve that is through prefabrication, and it's locally and it's neighborhood by neighborhood to satisfy the needs of our communities is brilliant. So that example, every time, it sounds like you guys are so magnificent at what you're absorbing and what you're delivering back to the community. So I want to keep hearing this. Like, we could do this quarterly. Crap, I would like to find a way to almost do this daily because you guys are awesome. But yeah, continue to share as David and Anthony have what you're finding and how you're doing it. So those examples can place a roof, quality roof, an efficient and affordable roof over our neighbors. That's a combined effort. You've learned about collaboration today from these two fine gentlemen. Was joined with Audrey Grubesic, with Anthony, with David, and myself, Mark Willie, here on Offsite Dirt. We love this conversation, gentlemen, and we can't wait to have you back.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Mark and Audrey. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to the next iteration.